Hello, I'm Mike and I am the founder of Insight Platforms, where you're probably watching this, and I'm also a consultant at the intersection of technology and research. I'm going to be taking you through this webinar on AI and the agency, the impact of artificial intelligence on research businesses. Before I do that, I just want to give you a short introduction to Insight Platforms and some of the other resources you can find on the site. Many people come here to find companies and partners. We have over 1,000 different software companies, research agencies, data providers for research and analytics. And if you work for an agency or a software company, you can add your own listing for free if you want to. We run regular events. We have webinars with partners, some of our own content. We run demo days, which are much more about showing how new technology and methods can be used for research, and virtual summits on a range of different themes on innovation, on customer experience, advertising and brand, and various others. Everything that we do, you can watch on demand afterwards if you create an account to log in. You can also find articles, ebooks, and on-demand videos from ourselves and from a range of our partners on lots of different topics, lots of educational content here that you can access for free. And we also host our Insight Platforms Academy, where you can take courses. These courses, some of which are free and some of which are paid, are really for anyone looking to understand some of the basics of different research methods and get an introduction to research technology. The Essentials series are paid courses. They're introductory for anybody new to the industry. You may be a new researcher, you may work in product or marketing or sales. And these are all on-demand courses that take about an hour or two to complete. We also host specialist courses, some of which are provided by partners, some of which are free, on different topics like social listening and online qualitative research. Now let's get stuck into the meat of this webinar. AI and the agency, the impact of generative AI on research businesses. This is a presentation that I've given at many live events so far this year, and as with anything to do with AI, things change very, very quickly. So don't be surprised if some of what you see has been superseded by the time you're watching this, but hopefully some of the principles will still remain useful. Now, let's start with a video.
Hello there, dear tourists. While I appreciate the attention, let's be honest. Standing in line for hours just to see me is not exactly the most exciting way to spend your holiday.
Trust me, I've been hanging here for centuries and I've seen it all.
The pushing, the shoving, it's not pretty.
As Vincent van Gogh, I might say, don't just go to see my paintings, go to Denmark.
There, you can skip the crowds and enjoy the simple pleasures of life.
Like biking through charming towns.
Exploring picturesque coastlines.
And let's not forget about Denmark's legendary food scene.
Wow!
That's the true joy of travel.
The unexpected surprises and adventures that come from stepping off the beaten path.
That being said, I do hope to see you back soon. I do get lonely in this museum, you know.
Now, I have to thank our friends at Affectiva for supplying this ad and some of the insights associated with it, because that ad was entirely scripted by ChatGPT with some light editing for length and accuracy. The images you saw there were animated using deepfake technology, and it was tested using Affectiva's Emotion AI, which recognizes emotional expressions on people's faces and understands how do people respond to advertising. They've done this for tens of thousands of ads for many large brands. They found that this ad created by AI was highly engaging. It elicited a very positive response from the audience and performed at least as strongly as a conventional ad. In fact, was largely indistinguishable from real advertising created by humans. So the measures that you have here for audience engagement and the number of smiles that people have throughout the ad perform very, very well when compared to the database of all the ads that they've tested. So the question has to be, if AI can create ads, could it also run research projects? Now, we need to recognize that AI is already very well embedded in the research process. Lots of agencies and teams are using AI, machine learning technologies for all sorts of different applications. Things like text analytics, so understanding the topics and the sentiment embedded in text. That may come from open sources, it may come from verbatim answers to survey questions. Similar types of techniques for social listening, so for measuring or for understanding what people are talking about in the public sphere. Using image recognition and analysis to identify brands, to understand what people are doing in different photographs, often again from social media sources. Using AI for System 1 measures, so for emotion analytics, a little bit like affectiva, in this case Element Human, measuring the emotion that people express on their face while they're engaging with media content. Now, generative AI is relatively new in the number of applications that it's spawning. Language generation is a significant component of this, using many of the same underlying technologies that exist for text analytics, natural language processing, but supercharged by large language models, the prime example of which is OpenAI's ChatGPT. I'm sure most of you watching this will be familiar. There are image generators that are used with a text prompt to be trained on millions of images online, and then generate a fresh, entirely new image based on that input. There are also synthetic audio generators that will take a text input and voice it according to your specifications for different tone of voice, different accents, different genders, and so on. And there are also now synthetic video generation tools, most of which currently are avatar based. So again, using text prompts and having video avatars voice that input as part of a video output. Now let's bring all this closer to home for the research industry and look at 4 specific ways in which generative AI will impact agencies. And take you through some examples and some applications here for research design, then data collection, then data creation or generation, and finally looking at the implications for analysis and reporting. So let's start with research design first of all. And there are many tools now emerging for the creation, the automatic creation of surveys based on simple inputs. This is very useful for people who are not very familiar or experienced in designing and writing surveys from scratch. Will extend the reach to far more people who can create a text prompt with an objective of what they're trying to understand, and then survey tools like SurveyMind, which is a relatively new startup, or Pollfish AI will generate surveys based on that input. And you can see if you enter into Pollfish, you'll get your brief will turn into a series of questions that you can then edit and improve. Now, it's not just for survey-based research. Qualsy is an online qualitative research platform that has embedded on the right-hand side here. You can see what they call their Qualsy AI Ideas Assistant. Again, you can enter free text prompts, you can enter questions and queries, and you'll generate ideas to then go and populate your online discussion or co-creation project or community activity plan. It's not just about surveys and qualitative discussion guides, it's also about concepts and ideas that can then be tested in research. So here you can see a collection of 3 or 4 different concepts that were created in less than 5 minutes using 2 different tools. The first of which was Notion AI for the text, was briefed to come up with 4 different men's skincare product ideas with features, benefits and a headline, and then using Midjourney to generate images that could be used to illustrate each of these. So these are potentially game-changing for the research process, to be able to quickly create concepts on the fly as part of a research process, or iterate with consumers and refine them as you go with the assistance of these AI tools. Next, let's look at the impact on data collection. Now, if we think about research, primary research that involves asking people questions and gathering data, we've always had something of a trade-off between reach, scale, and empathy. So the reach really is a byword for quantitative surveys. The empathy really is the access for qualitative depth. We think about something like an NPS survey. So for customer experience feedback, simple rating scale, these are embedded everywhere these days, in apps, in online websites, in feedback forms. They are very good at getting reach. So often there's no cost to the provider to gather the data. They're very impersonal, they're very broad, they capture quantitative numeric feedback primarily. We think about what's at the extreme on the other end of the horizontal axis. This is depth interviews. So if you can spend time one-to-one with an individual, you can observe them, you can ask questions, you can generally build much more empathetic insights. It's been hard to combine these two things. You trade off between quant and qual, between reach and empathy. That has not been really possible to get the best of both worlds in one interface up until now. Developments in what we call conversational AI will start to bring these two things closer together. It will, whether you want to talk about adding a qualitative lens to quantitative surveys, or whether it's about achieving qualitative at scale. There's lots of language around this, but there are ways to get here, and I'll show you different steps in this journey now. So still with this reach and empathy trade-off axis, really one of the first steps on here that we could look at is capturing video-based feedback from participants. Tools like VoxPopMe have been around for a while, which have allowed survey designers to embed video feedback and capture into surveys so that people can respond on their mobile phone, and there's AI on the back end to transcribe the content of that video, to analyze the themes, the sentiment, and to build insights automatically. So video-based capture is really one of the first ways in which we can start to generate a bit more empathy and a bit more qualitative insight at scale. Next, when we think about the autonomy of these approaches, avatar-based interviewing is something we're likely to see far more of as generative AI takes root. This example is a startup called Foretell, which is really developing its product with non-profit organizations in Africa and South Asia. It uses avatars to ask questions in different languages, and then it captures feedback using the video camera on a smartphone. So it's entirely spoken word, it's using images and video to be able to elicit responses for people who may not necessarily have the highest standards of literacy. But you can see here, this may be a nudging up our little scale of empathy, but being able to do this at large scale at reach as well. So that's avatar-based interviewing. Next on our scale here are conversational surveys. A great example of this is Inca. Inca uses AI to automate interactions and embed them in surveys to really achieve a qualitative experience at greater scale. So for example, if an answer is given to a survey, the AI can then probe more deeply in the same way that a qualitative interviewer might in a face-to-face interview. So responding to the open-ended answers that are given can elicit much more depth, tends to encourage a better survey experience, can often result in much longer, more considered responses from participants. So that's conversational surveys as we're starting to get further up this scale where we're connecting reach and empathy. The next one that I want to talk about is autonomous moderation. So imagine having a robot moderator for qualitative discussions. You may be familiar with this film with Joaquin Phoenix. Her, it really explores the nature of human computer interaction with the deep relationship that is formed between the central character here and his AI. Now, I'm not going to claim that we can achieve this now or that it's on the immediate horizon, but it's interesting to explore the beginnings of something like this. GPT-4, as the time of putting this together, is the most recent iteration of the GPT large language model, and I briefed it to adopt the persona of a qualitative market researcher and to interview me as a user of male skincare products. I asked it to conduct that research interview to ask about the products I use, the level of interest they might have in a new face cream, but crucially, to wait for my response to each question, to play it back to me, and then to inform the content of the next question. That took place in text form in the ChatGPT interface. As you can see here, you can see us going back and forth. You can see GPT is responding to the inputs that I'm giving it on this question. Now, this isn't particularly engaging, so we turned this into a video and used the synthetic audio tools that I mentioned earlier and created a short form video with me voicing the responses that I was giving to this survey. So have a look at this and you can start to see the potential for where this may go in the future.
Interview today. To begin, can you please tell me a bit about yourself, such as your age, occupation, and any hobbies or interests that you have?
I'm 50 years old, I run my own business, and I like to go running and swimming.
It's great to hear that you're active and have your own business. Considering your lifestyle and the fact that you engage in outdoor activities like running and swimming, how important is skincare to you? And what specific concerns do you have when it comes to taking care of your skin?
Yeah, I worry that it gets quite dry. When I go running, I sweat quite a lot. It's quite salty. When I go swimming, like the chlorine in the pool dries out my skin. I guess I'm also a bit worried about sun damage in the summer.
Thank you for sharing your concerns. It seems like hydration and sun protection are important factors for you. Can you please tell me which skincare products you currently use to address these concerns and how effective you find them in dealing with dryness, salt from sweat and sun damage?
That's an abridged version of the whole episode, which lasts about 5 minutes, and you can find that on LinkedIn, the full version, if you're interested in finding out more. So, we can see how AI has the potential to bridge this gap between quantitative and qualitative primary research by bringing these different techniques together. So basic video feedback, but again, using AI to understand and decode the content of the language there, using avatars to interview and video feedback to make that much more interactive, using the language model to drive conversational surveys. So it's much more about response, call and response, playing back to people the content of their verbatim feedback, and then fully autonomous moderation, which may or may not include the use of avatars and real-time feedback and much more emotional bonding as part of a large-scale quantitative exercise. So that was about data collection. I'm now going to talk about data creation, because this is something that is in some ways pushing the boundaries and is making many people feel a little uncomfortable with where it may be going. Now let's take a step back and just think for a moment about eye tracking. You may be familiar with eye tracking. This has been conducted for many years. It involves understanding where pupil movements are going in response to visual stimulus. Historically done with glasses, can often be done in store to see to what extent people notice in-store promotions or packaging. Increasingly latterly has been done with webcams. The technology has improved significantly to make this feasible on mobile devices as well. The outputs tend to be gaze plots or heat maps like this that identify where people's attention is most likely to be drawn. Now, machine learning has triggered a wave of innovation that uses both historical eye tracking results and new theoretical models to create what we call predictive eye tracking. Dragonfly is one company in this space that uses various models to predict where human attention is likely to be drawn in new creative, packaging, advertising, or any other visual asset. So these are tools that you can upload a new design into, and you can get a heat map or a gaze plot that will give you the result as if you had conducted eye tracking. Now, clearly, there are some differences between conducting real primary eye tracking research and the machine learning outputs in some cases, but in many cases they're close enough to be able to make a decision early in the process. Other companies in this space like Aim Power have deployed these predictive AI models to be able to use them for asset design, for store design, for all sorts of different marketing applications. There's a great case study between Aim Power and Henkel that talks about the hundreds of marketers and designers that are using these for basic early stage design assets like product designs and messaging on pack. So you can see some examples here, uploading the initial before design into the Aim Power product. We'll highlight particular areas of concern, and then once it's redesigned, we'll give it a different score. We'll identify where you can improve it, and then input into the way that packaging is designed. So lots of creative designers are using these for improving their early stage assets. Now, in a similar way to the predictive eye tracking and the predictive design asset creation there that we saw, we're now starting to see the emergence of several startups that are creating synthetic respondents for research, using large language models to generate hypothetical audiences with whom you can interact and ask questions and start to build hypotheses that you can then take into deeper research. So Synthetic Users has a focus on UX research and is all about generating personas based on particular criteria. You can then ask questions of with a concept or an idea, or to understand a bit more about their lives. This is controversial. It is causing many traditional researchers and primary researchers to challenge the validity of this, particularly when you're talking about using it as a substitute. The thing to bear in mind here is this is not really intended as a substitute for primary research. It's not really sufficiently established yet to be able to do away entirely with primary survey or qualitative research. But they're very good at introducing new ideas earlier in the process, at fleshing out hypotheses, using them to shape the design of your primary research. So be aware of the limitations, but don't be closed-minded about the potential of these tools that are using the power of the large language models like GPT-4. Now moving on to analysis and reporting, because this is another area where AI is likely to have significant impact on the research process. In the qualitative space, these large language models are really enhancing and improving the efficiency of qualitative analysis. You can upload long qualitative research transcripts into tools like Coloop, so specifically built for analyzing qualitative research, and it will synthesize the content of that. It will give various prompt-based queries that you can then use to summarize different aspects, action points or outcomes or pros and cons. You can also do this in generic tools like Notion, and this is a productivity and note-taking tool that many companies use. It actually uses the GPT-4 model, you can paste in, you can upload your transcripts into this, and then you can ask it for the most important components. So you can see here, this is a summary of these verbatim responses that have been pasted into here, writing, automatically identifying the most important highlights in those 50 or so survey responses that have been put into this product. We're also going to see an explosion of quantitative tools for analytics that are GPT based, so prompt based inputs that allow people who are not necessarily the most advanced Excel based researchers or analytics aficionados to be able to ask queries in natural language of structured quantitative data. So Accio Chat Data Prep is a generic tool, not a research specific tool, but there are research specific tools like Inspirient, which uses ChatGPT as an interface layer on top of survey data. So you can see an example here with a query that is posed about the single most important factor in this survey data set from a particular perspective, Republicans. It gives a text-based answer, it creates a charted response to identify where the most interesting results are, and you can drill down and you can get it to write more conversational responses to your inputs and queries. You may have remembered earlier in the process when we talked about survey design using generative AI. Well, SurveyMind, one of those apps that is a recent startup, also has the capacity to write text-based reports autonomously based on survey data. So you can actually get a first draft report written based on the results of your survey data there as well. These can then be edited and improved, but it's all about helping to make the process more efficient or speeding things up, particularly for people who are not necessarily the most experienced researchers. And then finally, there's what is effectively a chat GPT for your own proprietary data. There are lots of issues with chat GPT and OpenAI. Companies, enterprise businesses in particular, are anxious about uploading proprietary data from a competitive, from a compliance, from a privacy angle, entirely understandably, because that input can often be used to retrain these public models. Companies like MarketLogic Software are trying to bridge that gap by using the large language model technology, but combining it with proprietary tools that guarantee confidentiality and allowing companies the confidence to upload their research data, to have a ChatGPT-like interface, but one that improves by sourcing data accurately, by guaranteeing the confidentiality and the security. So having really a conversational agent to be able to say, what is the story of this brand in these markets for this target audience? And that's something that should really help to democratize access to insights way beyond customer research teams. So let's look at some of the specific challenges and opportunities for research agencies that this AI stuff poses. First off, some of the challenges. Really in the short term, we're looking at some specific risks. I alluded to one a moment ago, which is really all about compliance. And, the issue here with compliance is proprietary data, personally identifiable data, anything you need to keep private, is, it's risky to upload any of this content into ChatGPT. So if you're working with client materials, you need to be very, very careful about your contract with the client and the AI tools that you're using to make sure that you're not in breach of your obligations. Next up, one of the challenges that people have found, especially with ChatGPT, is accuracy, because it's prone to what many people have referred to as mansplaining, so overconfidence, and really hallucinating answers and making things up. So this has caused people some quite public issues, but we all need to be very wary of just trusting blindly in these models and applications that are built on top of the models, because they're not necessarily optimized for truth. They're optimized for creativity, particularly in ChatGPT. Finally, the big challenge around the use of a lot of these tools is transparency. We don't know how the algorithms are designed. We don't understand the sources of data they're trained on. We don't understand how the models work. So we need to make sure we're digging as much as possible, that we're trying to find partners and models that will be more transparent. There's a big push to make these things more understandable and accessible from the outside. In the medium term, we're going to have to adapt and learn to live with an AI-powered research industry. What does that mean if you're an agency? Well, first of all, people. What's the role for people when we've got so much AI, we've got so much autonomous technology taking over things? We'll need to explore the types of roles that we want in agencies, the types of staffing and team sizes. What does a career progression look like when we have many things that may previously have been done by junior people or by specialists actually taken over by autonomous software tools? So how do we develop the skills? This needs to be explored and thought about quite carefully. Next up, we're likely to see, as an industry, far more competition from new types of companies, new startups, new tools. We'll see clients using software and providers that have not previously been competing with agencies. And they're likely to bring new pricing structures, new ways of generating value, new ways of integrating and making data more autonomous or connected into other systems. So that's something to be alert to. Finally, there's a big question about the role of clients. And in this sense, I mean clients as in consumer insight teams, research teams with a dedicated market research remit. And this type of technology is going to put these organizations under pressure in the same way that it will put agencies under certain types of pressure, because there'll be much more opportunity for certain types of stakeholders to go DIY, to be able to use their own tools, to be able to answer their own questions with AI-powered research and analytics tools. That's going to raise the question about the role and the impact of research and insights teams in the same way that it's asking questions of agencies. This really, needn't be such a big point of fear, because there are so many more opportunities in the space that I want to explore now. So what are the opportunities? Right now, if you're an agency, you really want to be learning about these, getting hands-on with some of these tools. Clients, research clients, are actually asking for input from their agencies to say, we trust our agencies, we have an established relationship, we want them to bring us the insights around how do we adopt AI. It is actually much safer for clients to work with agencies who are experimenting with AI than it is in some cases for them to bring it in-house and do it themselves. There are many procurement, compliance and technology barriers to them doing that. So there's a real opportunity to go to clients and say, hey, we've been working with this tool, we think it's great, we think we'd like to run a pilot project with you, and to be on the front foot about this stuff, not to be hiding from it. Then, I think that in the immediate short term, if you're working in an agency, if you're running an agency, there's going to be a very strong focus on using these AI-based tools to maximize efficiency. Because if you think about some of the tools we've looked at, survey design, analyzing qualitative data, these are the types of things that really start to take time and cost out of the process. So you can use these to boost proposal writing, so generating new sales documents for clients that are very specific and tailored to them. First draft content that can then be edited, personalized and enhanced. Use it for coding of open-ended responses, using it, as I mentioned, for summarizing open-end qualitative data. But then I think once we've established the baseline of efficiencies, there's opportunity here about innovation. So how do we harness AI for creativity and new value propositions, because that's really where we'll see the long-term impact, generating new ways of doing things, combining, as we saw, some of that qual and quant data, knitting it together with some of these new tools. So using some of these hybrid solutions to synthesize primary data with synthetic data. So if we can use the synthetic audiences to generate hypotheses, or we can use them to build our initial concept ideas and then go and test them in primary research, making sure that we're connecting those things together should be an opportunity to build new research products. But don't forget, a lot of these, at the stage we're at in the market right now, in the development of AI, a lot of these tools are very generic. They're not specific to individual categories. If you work in B2B, if you work in healthcare, if you work in some of these very niche consumer categories, you're not going to be able to find the level of quality and relevance in these generic large language models that you need to apply to your business and your clients' business needs. So they're going to be an opportunity to potentially refine something, to create something as an agency, to enhance large language models with your own data, your own knowledge of a particular category or industry, and then build something new. And then who knows, maybe there's more creative outputs and reporting, maybe conversational deliverables. Maybe you can package things in a way that allows clients to query the reports that you give with a conversational interface, so they can chat with your report. They can interact with an avatar, video avatar, that's actually presenting to them in different languages. There's lots of creative output that we can envisage even at this early stage for these AI tools. So that's it for this brief overview. There's lots of opportunity to learn more on the Insight Platforms website. In 2023, we've held a number of different workshops and panel discussions and presentations on this topic. All of these are free to access, and you can see them at insightplatforms.com if you head there and you search on the webinars tab. We also host regular free virtual summits. These run over 2 or 3 days, typically demo days. You can sign up and see all sorts of new technology, lots of which will have AI as a core component. These happen 2 or 3 times each year. And we host our virtual summits. The Innovation Insights Summit you can see here. We've hosted them on various different topics, but you'll often get insights into how different companies, suppliers and clients are applying AI to their business problems and their research needs. So that was it. That was AI and the agency. There are many other resources, hopefully, that you'll use to explore the insights that you find here. If you want to get in touch with me, then please connect with me on LinkedIn. Drop me a line through the site, through the contact form. But that's it for this session, and I hope you found it valuable.